All right, getting the gasser back together now. After a winter rebuild of everything, pretty much, except for the bottom end. Getting the chain back on, and I remember reading an article on Dirt Bike about how to adjust, how to make easy way to make the chain adjustment. And Mr. Know-It-All, smart aleck, but knows a lot. He does talk about this little block that these guys built, so that when they're adjusting their chain, they just slide this block in, tighten the chain down, and then take the block out, and the chain's a perfect adjustment. This is based on the idea that the swing arm, the chain tension actually varies with where the swing arm is, so that when the counter shaft, the swing arm pivot, and the rear axle are all in perfect alignment, that's where the chain should be the tightest. And it shouldn't be too tight, because if the chain's too tight here, it'll put a lot of stress on the counter shaft and can break the counter shaft or break the case. And I've heard stories of that. I've never seen it. Of course, when I was a kid on my YZ60, I tightened my chain down to as hard as I could, thinking that was the best thing so it wouldn't come off. I had no idea I was nearly screwing my bike up. So the idea is, of course, we'll just do this. I tried to eyeball it, and I realized how far off I could be when I eyeballed it. So a little bit of construction string here. Just put a pencil in this part and a pin in this part, and to try to center that, we'll just make a little loop here and a little knot. This will make an easily adjustable knot here. Okay. I won't make this too tight, I don't want to break my pencil. Okay, and that'll keep it centered on this one. And then we'll just have to make sure this one's kind of centered. Okay. So now, all these should be in a perfect line here. And it's kind of rubbing on that, so let me get it off that so it's not rubbing on it. It shouldn't be touching there. So looking straight in at this, I don't know if it's straight with the camera, it looks like it's right in the middle of that, of the swing arm pivot. Okay, so that's center. And then the idea is this is where the chain should be its tightest, not super tight so it's stressing the counter shaft every time the suspension cycles up and down, but tight enough to allow a tiny bit of play, but also so that when the swing arm flexes down and up, that the chain doesn't get super loose. So, of course, when the swing arm drops to its full, of course the shock's off right now, that's what makes this easy. When the swing arm drops, the rear axle actually comes closer to the counter shaft. I'm going to exaggerate it with my right hand here, and as my hand comes down, it's pivoting on this. Axle actually gets closer to the counter shaft, so more play comes into the chain. As so let's see, jump off a jump, the swing arm drops to its full droop, hits its bottom out point, and then there's some slack in the chain. And then as you land, this rear axle starts to come back up. And as it hits this midpoint right here where it's centered, that's where maximum pinch on the chain should be. And you don't want it too tight, of course, because that's where it stresses the counter shaft. And then, of course, as you land on the jump and the suspension compresses, the rear axle comes higher. That shortens the distance between the axle and the counter shaft. Again, I'm exaggerating it, but it makes it easier to see that more slack comes in the chain. So right now there's a lot of slack right there, which Mr. Know-It-All says there should be about 15 to 20 millimeters of slack right here. So I'm going to set that in a minute here. We're just going to drop this away from center here and see how much more slack is in the chain now. And we'll jack it back up to center here. Straight. Okay, I'm looking straight in at it. The camera's not, so that should be about right. And it's not, again, it's not catching anywhere. That's about center right there. We'll call that good. Now I'm going to go ahead and adjust this to about 15 millimeters of play, and then we'll put the shock on, put it to full droop, and then we'll build the block of wood. That's a perfect, and we'll cut it to the perfect size so that it fits right in here. Butts up against the chain slider, and that'll make an easy way to adjust the chain. Okay, and as you're making this adjustment over and over, make sure that the swing arm or the bike frame isn't pivoting for some reason. So it can do that. And we'll make sure it's not pivoting by just making sure that this is still right in the middle here. Okay. Got some of the slack out. Let's just see here. We'll set it at 15 right there. And I'm going to eyeball it. And that's about 15 millimeters right there. So I'm happy with that. I think I'm going to set it right there. Go ahead and torque the rear axle. So now when the suspension cycles, chain's pretty sloppy at full droop. Of course, this is probably beyond the droop of what the shock will let it do. We'll come up to about level there. And you can see that I can still, it's pretty wobbly right there. That's pretty tight. Not pretty tight, but I can still have some play in there, so that's not stressing the countershaft. And as the suspension cycles way up to the back fender, a lot of play develops there again. Okay, getting this wrapped up, this chain adjusting thing wrapped up. Looks like got the shock on, got the upper and lower bolts torqued, and got the pull rods on, got those torqued, got the rear axle torqued, and it's even on both sides. And I measured it, so actually my measuring hash marks are pretty accurate from the center of these. So that's nice to know. So this block of wood is a 1x2, which if you do construction, you know a 1x2 really isn't 1x2. It's 1.5 inches here instead of 2 inches. So I'm going to put it flat against here. And the swing arm, so both ends are touching here and here. And then slide it up till it butts up against that. And it's actually the perfect fit. That's right there. And I could lift it like a millimeter off that if I try really hard. So when I'm putting my chain on now, or my back tire on again, I'll just slide my axle shaft in, slide up the block, hold that right there, go ahead and adjust the adjusters. So this is the tightness right there, and then tighten that down, and I'll be done. It's an even better way to adjust your chain. Sweet. Thanks, Dirt Bike.